Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to this week's episode of Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell, and I'm joined by my co-host this week. He's back, Mark Davison. Mark, how'd you go? How'd you go at your sports tournament last week?
Well, to be honest, Matty, how you doing? I got in one of the divisions, I got second.
So collapse to Mark.
Yeah. So I've only been playing. It's pickleball, and in the States, it's like mini tennis. So about 4 million people play it over there. I used to play tennis when I was younger. I played for a long time. But we had a good go, and me and another partner, a young guy, 15-year-old guy, we got to the semis, and then we came second. And yeah, pretty happy. I played about 11 matches. I think I won about 5, and that was my first tournament. So, you know, I don't know. And some of the guys are pretty fit though. Like they can, like they're just, and you just bring it back to the Steelers too, and how, you know, these receivers run off the line 60 snaps a game and they're back and they didn't get the ball. Then you kind of think, oh, maybe that's why Antonio Brown was mad. You know, yeah, it's a lot of fitness. It's a lot of fun. It's gotten me, a bit more chipper in my step now. I play twice a week, and who knows if the Australian Championships are in September. So,
right. So you got some time, mate. You got some time to get working at it.
Train, man. I got to train for it, you know. But it's good to have you back too, because we haven't had a show together. I think in 2-3 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's been a while since the two larrikins from Down Under have been on together. And look, welcome to everyone to this week's show. We've got some great people in the live chat already. Double HH, Lombardi. I think there's Patricia in there as well. Just me, Jared Devil, Ryan O'Toole, Jody Shelton on the Facebook side. So Stacey Lynn on the Facebook side. So awesome to have all of you joining us to talk all things Pittsburgh Steelers. The draft is less than a week away. You know, it's Mark. It's incredible. We're here. We've talked about the draft for so long, and we're almost there. But definitely, Double HH is saying this is the Aussie pre-draft Aussie drink session. That's hilarious.
That was last night. I'm a bit dusty today, guys. I should be on the hangover, and I was on the hangover a few days ago. We did our mock draft. But today I'm a little bit dusty. We had a few drinks with some friends at a barbecue. So I'll see how I go today.
And I hit the town too on a concert. So we're pretty lucky that Mark and I can go do that in the world we live in at the moment. So we're very lucky down here with that freedom. And actually on that freedom, for everyone over there in the US that's either listening live to us now or on the audio side or wherever you're listening around the world, today for Mark and I, as we always like to say, we come to you live from the future. We're coming to you live from Sunday, the 25th of April. The 25th of April in Australia and New Zealand is what we call Anzac Day. It's like our Memorial Day, and it marks when the Australians and together with the New Zealanders, that's why it's Anzac. But mostly it was the Aussies jumped in there in Gallipoli in World War I and tried to take the Dardanelles and open up the channel there for the Allies. So when they stormed in there into Turkey, stormed that beach, I think we lost about 8,000 Aussies just in that like one battle there of Gallipoli. We'll talk a bit more about it in Slinging the Slang, but you know, I'm repping the Salute to Service Steelers shirt for today. And it's always good to reflect on the freedoms that we have. And, you know, war's a very difficult subject, but across all the countries, particularly, you know, America and Australia have a really nice tie together. People have sacrificed a lot of freedoms in their lives for the freedoms that we enjoy.
Can I just make one point on that, Matty? We have, the dawn service, and we have certain marches today. Some are cancelled, some are going ahead. Some people are standing in their own parks. Even to yourself in Australia or in America, if you do Memorial Days, don't feel guilty if you can't get to these places. Like today, I can't get to the marches because I'm here with Matty. But even in today, just take time to reflect in maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes of the day and just think, okay, these guys fought for our country, and just pay your respects. That's all I can really say.
Yeah. J Devil though brings up just like an Aussie to one up a Kiwi. No. We're in it together. That's why it is the Anzac piece. So no, didn't mean anything there. But look, let's talk Steelers. It's been a big week, Mark. There've been a few different pieces, and I know it's been covered in some of the other shows, but we're funny. We come sort of that last of the week, but preview the week. I know, you've had some thoughts about this across, Facebook and the Slack channel. How are you feeling when you saw Mike Tomlin new 3-year deal?
Oh, I'm all for it. I'm 100% in. So he's got this year and then another 3 years. That's 4 years. The number one, everyone says it. Who would you rather have? That's the biggest question. Who would take Mike Tomlin's spot right now? I can't think of anyone. And therefore, it's his job to lose. And look, we've got faith in the guy. He's been there 15 years, I believe, since 2005 or 4. Yeah, Coach Tomlin never had a losing season. There are some skeptics say, okay, we haven't won the big Super Bowl, but neither have 30 other one teams. It's very hard. Out of all the competitions around the world, it's a very hard competition to win. So you've got to at least have someone who can give you a chance with Tomlin.
Well, but it is a really hard competition to win. And I think we saw that with the Steelers last year when you go 11-0, and we've talked about the injuries and COVID that impacted all of that. But you get 16, or now you'll get 17 games. In Major League Baseball, you get, 160 plus. NHL, you usually get like 80 plus. NBA's 82. You've got time to go through these waves of form. English Premier League, you get 38 weeks. So even in our NRL competition, you get 26 weeks. But you've got 17 games to do something, and that makes it a very hard competition. You've got to keep everyone pumped throughout it. It is whilst we say it's 17 games, it's at a tough time of the year. It's cold. You're traveling. There are all these sort of challenges from that perspective. So there's all the on the field stuff. But then there's also the off the field and the game management and the player management. And we've seen characters or egos like, your Antonio Browns and your Le'Veon Bells the last few years, come out and, have those problems when they're off the Steelers. So I think there's a lot with Mike Tomlin. It's not just about what happens on the field. It's what happens off the field. That can be a really big difference maker in what happens. So I was certainly glad to see him with that contract. I was worried that, he might go. I think it's interesting, though, because we've been talking about across the different BTSC shows the concept of Ben Roethlisberger, this not being his last year. I just wonder whether this deal is for Tomlin to set up someone else, or whether it's tied to, if Ben is going to last, how long can he? Is Tomlin going to instill a quarterback for a couple of years? Is it just Steelers don't want to do like a 10-year John Gruden style deal, and this makes sense. So they're all the different things to think about, I guess. Mark, as well, though, the number change. What did you think about that? I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And I've held off asking you as well on, when we've been messaging.
I'm a bit old school. So I kind of like, for what I know, the NFL right now is what I like, kind of thing. I'm not one. I'm really funny. I love traveling the world, and I'm a big solo traveler. At the same time, I hate change. So when they push this thing on you and they change the numbers, like, okay, now is it like who can? I'm not even sure what the numbers are, but someone could be a number 6 or something for a running back. Is that right?
Yep. Skill positions 1 to 49. Yeah.
I think if the new draftees, if they want to, don a single-digit jersey, sure. It's not going to really affect too many people. I know Tom Brady came out in a piece and said, I don't know who I'm going to be thrown to. Well, mate, look at the jersey. Look at the color of the jersey and not the number. So it doesn't overly bother me, but I kind of wish, like, even in our NRL game, just stop changing rules. Just keep things to a similar format, maybe over time. But there had to be a big reason why they changed the rules for the numbers. What do you think?
Yeah, it is an interesting question because I don't mind it. Put it that way. I'm a bit like, I know Jeffrey Benedict and I were talking about this a little bit in the Slack channel, and I think he brought it up on the curtain call this week, which was a great curtain call. If you happen to miss that one, go back and have a listen to that. After this show, whether you're listening live now or whether you're listening to our podcast. But I'm kind of open to the bigger defensive guys having it. I don't know. For me, it reminds me of more rugby sort of style. And that's where the sport did originate from in some capacity, so I don't mind it. I don't think you should just be able to chop and change, though. I think people have bought jerseys, and I know you can, they can do swaps. I think if it's in a certain period of time and what have you, and all the rest of it. But I mean, if you've just bought a Juju jersey, you want it to be number 19, And also, I think it's really hard because look, Mark, you've got 2 jerseys on the back of the wall at the back there, right? You got Ben Roethlisberger, and I think the other one's a Terry Bradshaw jersey. Those guys haven't changed their number. It's not like basketball where you're playing, the full 20 years and you go between. But then again, if you go between the teams, you can change your number. So Yeah, for me, I'm not furious about it. I don't mind it. I think they potentially could have limited the amount of positions that are now open to those single digit numbers. But I mean, look, the players are going to play. Does it really matter? One quite fun, interesting thing. I think I mentioned this about 6 months ago, but one time in a preseason game in rugby down here, one of the coaches, and they actually got fined for this because you do have to have numbers. He put the initials of the player's jersey because, like in some of our sports, Mark, you don't have the name on the back of the jersey, right? So he put the initials on the back of the jersey, and it made it very hard. So there were players, if you convert it to like a wide receiver and tight end, that were going all over the field, and opposition teams couldn't figure it out. A bit like the case that Tom Brady brings up. But I mean, a number's a number, right? Like,
I think we'll get used to it. It's just you gotta what's the idea and the logic of why they changed it? I know that KC put the numbers forehand for, I think, because they had too many running backs on the roster that was sharing the same number, so they wanted to change.
There's also and there's also that for some teams they've retired, and I think this fed into Kansas City's piece. Retiring numbers limits the amount of numbers they've got available.
However, though, there are some teams that have retired about 15 to 19 numbers, I think we only have 2 official ones, and we have some ones we don't use. As this game progresses and goes along, that's going to be an interesting hurdle, say in 40 years' time, when you and I both have 9 kids like Phillip Rivers.
I won't be having 9 kids.
But you know what I mean? So I don't know how that's going to progress into the future. And then, number 7 won't be worn. Number 43 won't be worn. 50... here, you know what I mean? So it just depends.
But I think it's funny though, like if you look at 43, right, that's always going to be Polamalu's number. But if we had a running back at 43, I wouldn't mind that. I'd just go, all right, defense, no one can wear the 43, but on defense, I don't mind it. And I think with this number change though, the problem you've got there is it's so open. Like there's not that these are the numbers for the defensive positions. These are the numbers that are for offensive positions. But one thing I was thinking about, when I was listening back to the preview, so if you're not gone back and listened to the preview this week, go back and listen to, Dave, Jeff, and Bad there. It was a great show. But they were sort of talking about it from numbers of like, you might have a number that you really like, the guys that come through high school and then college and what have you. And I was thinking back to my own sort of when I was playing sport. And I'm not very superstitious in my daily life. But I mean, I do always put my left sock on first. That's something that's always stuck with me. But I didn't enjoy a number change when I changed numbers. Like there are a few numbers, for instance, that, I played second row in rugby. So I preferred the 4 than the 5. And every time I wore a 5, I seemed to have a bad game. And it fed into it that I never want to wear the number 5. When I started in basketball, my jersey number was literally by where you were in the alphabet, in terms of where the players that season at my school, I got 79. And then when I got more later on in my career, I got to pick 19, which is a favorite number for me. And I kept my 9 because I did it that way. But I just remember with different numbers, sometimes you just sort of feel superstitious about it. So if you got a guy that's worn a number through, Pee-wee football all the way through to college and then getting into the NFL draft, at least now in the future, they might be able to keep it. But as you say, Mark, is it really going to affect, players that are now, 5+ seasons into their career? Probably not.
Just one last thing on, I reckon, because all the college guys, they seem to wear single digits. So in the future, we might see a lot of 1 to 19 all be taken, whereas before it's just quarterback, punter, and kicker. So that's going to be interesting to see. And I think it's more of a marketing thing too. So if you get your college guy, one of the big boppers who have been in college for 4 years, have their special number, next minute they go into the NFL, that jersey is going to sell like hotcakes. But I don't agree with people changing their jersey with other fans who have already, bought their jersey, or it's even hard enough buying a jersey and the player leaves, like I did with AB. I bought his jersey, and then the next season he went haywire. Juju tried to say, "Oh, should I change my jersey to 9?" And then Chris Boswell went on Instagram and said, "Mate, you better ask me first," which I thought was great. He said, "Oh, make sure you give me a blank check." Like so that's a bit of banter, but you can't just be really, okay, I'm going to come to a team and I'm better than you. I want your jersey. The other guy should go, nah, mate, that's mine.
Well, they had this offseason, the Indianapolis Colts, right? I think it was Michael Pittman, the wide receiver. Carson Wentz comes in with number 11 and they're like, oh, Carson, give up your number. It's like, hell no. But Pittman's like play going into his second year. There wasn't even a top wide receiver. And you got Carson Wentz there who, if he's playing well and's protected, he could be like, a top 10 quarterback potentially. I don't think he is, but for some people. But it's just this is silly. This is peripheral.
I already went into on the mock draft. Go back and listen to the guys on the hangover. I went into Carson Wentz. I burned him a new one. I said that if Carson Wentz has no real power, if you're running a team as quarterback and you've got a statue with another man in your stadium under Foles, that's not your team, mate. I don't really believe in Carson Wentz. I think he's an average quarterback. I think he's just as average as Baker Mayfield, and I don't think he'll do anything. This is not the lay on Carson Wentz podcast, but I don't think he'll do anything in Indianapolis.
So that's two people that Mark doesn't like: the Bungles and Carson Wentz. All right, but let's move into the draft. So today's show, as we said, it's a bit of a draft view from down under. So the first thing we're going to do is Mark and I are going to talk about the Steelers' first round draft pick, which Mark got to participate in the BTSC mock draft and do that. So really, he was lucky to be able to do that. And in terms of, I wish I could have had the time to do that too. But that was a really cool piece, and it was a great show. And I know that you really enjoyed that, Mark. So I want us to talk about. You said it to me this week. You said, Matty, we just got to put our money where our mouth is, and we've just got to decide who the first round pick of the Steelers are going to take it in 24. So we're going to do that, and then in part two, we're going to look at day 2 and 3, and similar. And we actually Mark and I talked about this before the preview came on, but we're going to talk about day 2 and 3 in terms of the picks or positions that we do want the Steelers to pick and on what days. So that's going to be a really interesting piece. But let's kick it off with the number 1 draft pick, Mark. Pick 24. Now, we all know that in an ideal world, I would prefer to trade back, maybe to stay in latter part of round 1, but acquire another pick in 2, 3. I think that's going to be really important. More draft picks in a year where we've had so much change, where you've got players that have less, tape as well. So you're taking a bit more of a gamble. There are people that, they've got less tape because they were either off through COVID, there were less games, what have you. There's lots of different questions. People are coming out a lot younger as well. But Mark, all right, at pick 24, what are the Steelers going to do? Or what do you want them to do? If you're Kevin Colbert, if you're Mike Tomlin.
At this very point, and all the draft videos and all the draft coverage we've been doing over the last 2 months, I'm so unsure. I feel like I want to grab a running back. There are great ideas to grab a left tackle. We now know that our Big Al could be leaving us, or might not be signed back. There's been talks about, I looked on the NFL Live, watched some of their videos, talks about having a cornerback if they fall that far. Going into the defense, I mentioned on the hangover, bringing in Xavier Collins, a linebacker, to work with Bush would be a good idea. So I'm at the point, I really don't know. I think we have covered a lot of bases, even with in your Slack channels and with your war room and stuff. There's so many ideas we can have, and with now Vince Williams coming back, do we need Collins there? So I'm really leaning to, if I have to give an answer, which you want to answer, you're the one that came up with the question. Don't give away our secrets, Matty. Jeez. Now, look, if I have to give an answer, it's someone to follow, and I know the O-line's going to be there, but I would like to see a new running back because we haven't got Connor, so we need a bell cow running back. I would say bring in, if Najee Harris is there, then bring that bloke in. He's like 6'3". He's a big unit, and he'd be someone to rally around and someone to get around, and hopefully he can score touchdowns and move that ball forward. That's probably the guy I would go at this, my last view of it, because we don't have a show until it happens. Same thing though. There's so many options. We don't know. We just don't know who they're going to choose. And I'd be happy with anyone with all the scenarios we've been talking about.
Yeah, nice. I'm not going to go pick a running back. I'm going to stick to what I've said. You don't get a running back in round 1, at least to 24, right? If you really think that if you're running back, and I know the preview landed on running back being pretty much the need, if running back is or the pick that needs to be made there in round 1, if that's what you want to do, Javon, if the Jets pass on Etienne at 23 where they're picking right before us, right? Now, Harris could go, I think he might go to Miami in those mid rounds. There are a few other teams there that could technically get him. As I say, if you really want a running back there, you can get Etienne 3 or 4 spots later. The Browns don't need another running back. They got Kareem Hunt and they got Nick Chubb. The Ravens have got plenty of guys at the running back position. The Saints are fine at the running back position. There are a number of those different picks there that you can trade back with. Jacksonville have got James Robinson. They're not going to draft a running back in round 1. That would be really silly. So you can move back, and if you move back and you pick up more draft capital, that's a good thing. So if they go running back, I hope they do it because they've traded back to do that. I think, and I agree with Jeff and some of the other guys and Bad and stuff. Javonte Williams is the pick for me if you're going to go running back. And if that's the case, trade back with the Buccaneers, because you look at what they're doing with Fournette, they're going to want someone like a Najee Harris. For me, though, and Snowman's beat me to it in terms of what he put in there. Now, I'm big if there's the right tackle on the board. I really like Samuel Cosme out of Texas, not just because I'm a Longhorns fan, but quite frankly, we know we don't have starting. BJ Finney and JC Hassenhauer are not the answer at center. Equally, you wait till 55 or 87, you're going to have a problem. I talked about him I'm going to talk about him on War Room this week, actually. Kendrick Green out of Illinois, who's listed as a guard, but he will be a center at the next level. I'm really open to him, but he's going to, he's probably not even going to be there by 87 as well. I don't want to rely on that. I need someone that can plug and play day one. And for me, it's Creed Humphrey. I mean, now I know that the center class this year isn't as good, but to me, he's the top center, proven center in this draft. That's you need. You do a 5-year deal. He's even on most mock drafts or board and rankings, whether you're talking the Draft Network, Pro Football Network, PFF, he's in there between picks number 28 and 35 and more around that 28 spot. That's only 4 positions difference. Is that really a reach when that's the key position you need? I don't think so. So for me, I'll be very happy with at pick number 24, the Pittsburgh Steelers draft center Creed Humphrey. For me, I'll be happy with that.
Okay, so if you're going the O-line, which I've actually said I wanted to see happen as well. But here's the big thing. If you go the O-line at 24, which you bolster that up now, yep. How does that affect with the running game? Because I think what we have in our running back with our depth, I don't really see a clear number one there. Benny Snell, McFarland, like who will this run? If this O-line, will that open up more holes in the Canada system for McFarland to excel? Or do we need that big back like a Harris or Etienne to come through?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's hard without having any sort of indication on what Matt Canada sort of wants there as well. So for me, I mean, look, I like the idea, and they talked about him in the curtain call this week. I've liked him for a while. I like the idea of Trey Sermon. You can get him in round 3, right? Like, get an O-line in there that can do things, or get O-line get a Creed Humphrey. And then if you've got someone like an Asante Samuel Jr. there in the second, you can go get them, or you can go get a good linebacker or what have you. Or if Javonte's still around at 55, do that, or move up in the second if that's what you need to do. And there's chatting here about Landon Dickerson. If you weren't going to get Creed, if you get Landon Dickerson in round 2, which he does project sometimes there at the Steelers, in some mock drafts as well, that'd be really cool. But again, I still worry about his injury history, and we the Steelers fans, we criticize that so much, and like we should. I just don't want them to do that. But as you said there around the O-line and where we get that running back, there is value at those running back positions. And also, we've got guys like, as you say, McFarland, Benny Snell. I'm open to the Pittsburgh Steelers not having a bell cow running back. That's what I find really interesting, right? We sat here for a couple of years and sort of said, oh, the Steelers, it should be running back by committee, and then they can do different things, and it opens up the offense. And then in the last sort of 12 months, the narrative's changed to we need a bell cow running back, right? And then
it's like opposite.
It's opposite, and I don't understand this, because if this is where the Steelers are heading, because that's how Matt Canada offense works, and that was a big criticism of Tomlin, then we're ahead. The other thing as well, and it's stuck with me, and it's a big issue, I think, that's coming through, and I've sort of alluded to it several times now, is that running backs out of college have a lot of mileage on their legs, right? So I'm interested to see what you can get in that second to fourth round from guys that are less proven, but therefore and in saying that, you might get a lot of value, but you don't want to use high draft capital on someone that you don't know too much about their performance. And when you look at a guy like Najee Harris, he's played that had the biggest body of work compared to Etienne and Javonte Williams there. So I sort of sit there, I'm like, okay, great, but what happens when he gets to the NFL? And then, as Dave was talking about on the preview, running backs, have such a short shelf life. Do we want to invest a top pick there? So I'd rather invest in the O-line and do it that way, because also, let's not kid ourselves. Ben's throwing the ball 60% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have the O-line to protect him, and everything's been so run-focused, but the last week I keep thinking to myself, does that matter? Like, yes, it 100% matters. I'm not, you know how much I love the run game, but we've got to keep Big Ben upright. If we don't keep Big Ben upright, the whole thing's not going to work. We're not going to run the football every play of the game. We're not going to run it more than 50% of, the time. So let's make sure that we can create holes and we can protect Ben.
That makes a lot of sense. You made a really good point though with Bell. We didn't want him to be the bell cow. Now you've flipped my script, because I'm like, hang on a minute, now I want a bell cow. Like, I want to bring in a guy like Najee Harris, and I want him to be the guy and score 40 touchdowns, 30 touchdowns. But then when Bell was playing, I was the same guy saying, don't use him too much. So I don't know. You can't keep me happy. I don't know what's going on. I just wanted to hurry up and show up so we can have one person and we can really, talk about. And like I said, could be O-line, could be cornerback, it could be someone we don't even know. Because even at 24, still some surprises might come up there. You never know.
Yeah, 100. Well, this is a really good point, because I've been listening to some of the podcasts as well, and everyone should stay with BTSC, but I've been listening to some podcasts from the Draft Network, the Draft Dude guys, and they talk about some key picks that can flip the script for a lot of these positions as well. What does Atlanta do with their pick? What does Denver do with their pick? There are different, and there are some in the teens there as well. Indianapolis and Chicago are another two spots where, depending on where they go, could really alter things. And so that's where I sort of sit there, like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like we talk about not doing trades in mock drafts and stuff like that. We have no idea what's going to happen, on draft day. Equally players can fall. I mean, look at the Laramie Tunsil incident. That you don't know what's going to happen. There are going to be, and this is the thing, I've said Creed Humphrey because I had to put my money where my mouth is. But if there's a Greg Newsome or a JC Horn on the board, I'm going cornerback every day of the week. Like, that is plug in, day one starter, 5 years, don't have to worry about it. That's awesome for me. So I'm open to the Steelers actually doing that and, drafting that cornerback that everyone's like, oh my God, please don't. I'm just saying, if I have to put my money where my mouth is, safe pick. That's why I was going Creed Humphrey.
Got a question for you, mate. Are we in a better position in the draft than we were last year, do you think? Do you think we have a better inkling of who we are going to take, or is our team overall? We went 11-0, then we went 12 and what we finished? 12-4. Are we in a better spot, you think, with our overall team in this drafting process?
That's a great question. I think the Steelers, well, obviously we didn't have a number one draft pick last year, right? So I think last year was interesting, and I do want to get to Thaddeus' question. Last year was interesting because there was, I reckon, an element of pressure that was taken off Colbert and Tomlin and what have you, right? Now people are going to say, hang on, no, it's not. Like, you had to get that second round pick right. But the difference was they could see where the runs on positions were happening, right? They probably had their 3 or 4 people on their board, and they just went, right, if those guys sit there, they knew that the draft talk about where Claypool was going and what have you. Now, I'm also going to take a punt and say I don't think Claypool was the top receiver they actually necessarily wanted, right? He fell to them. He worked. He was who they liked. But what I do think the value was in that was that they got the process right, and given that COVID's impact, on the way you scout, the way you draft, the combine and what have you, I think that's where we're in a better spot than last year. Not just because we've got a number one draft pick, we've got a round one draft pick, but we've had to go up practicing that process. And I think that's overall. But also, if I diving into your question a little bit more and knowing the way you like to frame things up, if you're sort of saying we've got an ability to pick a few different. We can pick different positions. We're not like necessarily locked into one, right? Like we can pick running back and center and those sorts of guys.
Well, you've said it. Like, do we have less pressure this year, or is there more pressure to get that right pick? And if we do it wrong, are the fans gonna go crazy and go, "Oh my, why did you do that?" Whereas last year there was no first round, and we picked up Claypool and we got Highsmith, Dotson. So I'm just thinking, as a team, like, the team went to the playoffs. Can they build on this, or are they going to go backwards? Like, what's going to happen with this draft?
Yeah, and that's it. I think when you've got as many needs as we've got, I think that takes the pressure off as well. Because it takes the pressure off as well in a good way, because you kind of like, all right, cool. If the run on tackles happens, then maybe we need to draft a tackle earlier. If the run on running backs happens, maybe we need to go earlier on running back. Same thing at cornerback, same thing at center. So that's where I do think that we are better off than last year, is that we've got these needs, but at the same time, you've got this situation where there's a number of different positions. And also, this is where the Steelers are a bit lucky. Whilst we've said there's not, great round one starting quality there from the center position. Overall, the picks that the positions that they need, there's quite a bit of talent there in the first 80 picks. That's what I'm really excited about. Or there's great potential in those picks. So, yeah, for me, I think we are in a better position.
Cool.
Yeah. But I want to answer Thaddeus's question. And Mark, would you do this? Would you trade next year's second and a fifth round pick to move up 10 spots?
It all depends on the guy. If it's I'm looking now for the Steelers. What the Steelers really need is the guy. Like, I think we've got Big Ben, we've got the receivers, but if you had the guy who could change the game in a certain way, where you can get maybe 3 or 4 wins and that next playoff win to help TJ, to help Fitzy at the back, we need someone there. This is the moment where we have to put our chips in, and we need to, as Matty's dogs start going off. This is the moment now where we need to put all our effort in, and if we grab someone like that, they got to be a game changer. Can't have a guy waiting in the wings for 4 years and then he's going to be something great. He needs to be now. That's all I would say. If you're going to trade stock to go up, it's got to be a guy who can put some points on the board, or stop points from getting on the board. That's the only way I look at it.
Yeah, that was actually my neighbor's dog, but yeah, mine's been well behaved for once, so that's good. Yeah, I think you're totally right. Totally right, Mark. I just think, but if to answer Thaddeus's question, I'm open to doing that, but you got to get a transcendent sort of play with that, and you're not really going to get that, in at pick number 14. I think if you're going to trade up, you're either doing it for a quarterback. I've said before, I'm very open to doing this. I would trade up into that 8th or 10th pick and give up a couple of picks next year to get someone like a Rashawn Slater, someone that we can just bookend on the offensive line for the next decade that we can get 5 years out of. I would do it, because particularly if you want to keep Ben around. But at the same time, look at guys like we've drafted, like DeCastro, at that same spot. So, I'd more like to see them use next year's picks to get more capital in the second round or move up in the third. That's what I'd like to more see than potentially round one, because round one, as I said before, you will start to see where the run on different positions is happening, and then you can start working out who needs what with what teams, or you get an idea of what your competitor teams are looking to get. And that makes all the difference, because then you've got some data, I guess, that you can make those educated insights. But look, that wraps up sort of our chat around number 1 draft pick. I did quickly on this side on part 1. Want to jump into slinging the slang real quickly, as we like to always do. We like to sling the slang, just like Ben likes to sling the rock. And we like to give you that taste of Aussie flavor, whether it's Aussie slang or whether it's a little bit about Australia. So, Mark, what's your Aussie slang piece for this week?
Because it is Anzac Day, and for our veterans, and I used to work at the RSL, where people would meet and drink together and have good times, and a lot of the old fellas get together. And while I was working at the bar, they used to call me "G'day Cobber." So Cobber's like mates, like COBBER. So Cobber, that's like Australian slang, Kiwi slang, just an Aussie term that back in the day the old fellas would use to each other, and just say it's just a easier way to say mate. G'day Cobber. That's it.
Awesome. For me, man, Anzac Day is nothing without Anzac biscuits.
True.
Anzac biscuits. So we make them down under. They're very simple biscuit. They were sort of put together like I think the Anzacs, sort of had them, in terms of the battlefield. It was known also as the soldier's biscuit. And it was basically this biscuit that, made from rolled oats, sugar, plain flour, coconut butter, golden syrup or treacle, bicarbonate soda and boiling water. And it was put to them, and it was really real sustenance thing. And we enjoy these, on Anzac Day, we enjoy these biscuits, and people eat them all year round, but it's just particularly, it's just particularly one that you enjoy on Anzac Day, particularly Mark, when the ones that you buy in the packet are really hard, but then you get the soft ones that just like, oh, beautiful.
My grandmother used to make them. She was in the war as a medical driver for a little bit, not too long, but she was part of she was in the service. And she used to make Anzac biscuits, and they were delicious. They weren't like the Coles brand, the supermarket brand. They had caramel taste to them, a bit chewy. They were nice. They were like, your grandmother's like homemade cooking. So we always had them. Actually, throughout the year, she'd always make them, bring them over. And I don't know if they made it of oatmeal or something, but they're quite nice. It's just one of our traditions here. You'd have that with a cup of tea. But yeah, you can't go past it. You can't go past it. An Anzac biscuit.
That's it. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of Steelers Touchdown Under Part 1. Stay tuned for Part 2. We're going to look at Day 2 and Day 3 picks. And we'll be back after a short break. And have a moment's silence there for all the fallen heroes, from the military across all our different countries. And we're back on Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Mark Davison. Mark, how you doing? That was a full-on Part 1. Loved it.
That was pretty fun. You have fun saying that every week, don't you? Touchdown under.
Down under. Man, Dad did not do a good job of that last week. Touchdown under.
I'm sorry. We could just do a whole talk about that, but that's fun. Every week you get to have the old, touchdown under, which makes a lot of sense. And
I offer it to you all the time, and you don't do it.
Man, you're such a good leader. I'm that bell cow back, man. You're the quarterback, and I just want to run it forward and just head into the O-line and just bowl people over. If I was like 150 kilos, which I'm not, but yeah, you're the quarterback, mate. You're slinging the rock around here.
I don't know about that. But anyway, let's crack in to the next part we want to talk about with the draft, Day 2 and Day 3. So how we're going to do this, and we want obviously the live chat, feed in, jump in. We're going to start with it's all around the picks that we are open to the Steelers picking in terms of the positions, not necessarily the players, but really keen to get your thoughts on that rather than, the positions that we don't want them, to be drafting. So Mark, Day 2, right? Let's assume the Steelers have taken, because you and I both picked a position now, right? So let's assume the Steelers have taken Najee Harris. What are the positions that you're open to them picking on Day 2?
Well, you've got to go offensive line. I think it's one or two or the other. So if you go offensive line in the first round, you have to go running back. If you go running back, you have to go offensive line. Like I said, not a big draft guy, but that position you have to. A lot of guys are leaving. Left tackle, our center's not there. This is going to be a new offensive line for Big Ben. So maybe we need someone else there for depth. They'd be one of my picks at 55, I believe. So would you agree on that? If you went running back, you have to go offensive line, or was there another need before that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you can't. You do if you're thinking. See, if you'd said center there, I would have said maybe you can go get a tackle instead. But if you say offensive line, yeah, unless there's a massive run on cornerbacks, right? And you've started to see the O-line, fall back a bit. But I don't think it will. I think almost every team in the NFL at the moment has some needs in that O-line. I mean, you look at Kansas City, right? That the O-line they've put together now after that trade with the Ravens for Orlando Brown. Most of the guys on that line are really old. Like they've pulled, Carl Long out of retirement kind of thing. So there's, and it's one of those areas of the field like defensive line, or linebacker where you can always use additional support. So I do, and there's a lot of offensive draft picks coming out, offensive line draft picks coming out, in this draft. So yeah, I think you're right. If you go running back, you got to go offensive line. But my question to you is, are you going to go center or are you going to go tackle?
Oh, that's a big question. Why are you trying to make me think? That's a huge question. Well, I don't know the draft talent, but I believe if Big Al's leaving us, then you might have to go left tackle. Would that not make sense to try and fill that void?
Well, that's it. But it's also, do you look at day 3? Is there someone that's going to make it there after the 3rd round? And that's the question you're going to start that we've got to start asking ourselves. So flip side for me, obviously I've picked center for round 1. So I've picked Creed Humphrey. Then that opens it up because if Javonte's off the board, I'm going right. I'm actually going to go a cornerback, or I'm going to get the best inside linebacker in the draft, or I'm going to get if there's a tackle that I think is, early 2nd round grade, I'm going to go after him. I'll tell you a few positions I'm not going to go though. I'm not going to go wide receiver. I'm not going to go tight end. I'm not going to go punter or kicker, obviously. And I'm not going to go defensive line. But I would be open to edge rush if the edge rushes are falling. But I just don't think they will be on day 2, particularly 2nd round.
Just a question, Matty. Is a tight end a forgotten draft stock? Not many teams draft tight ends, do they? It's a very hard one to get right, isn't it? Like a lot of receivers can almost turn into tight ends. You don't see too many big tight ends coming off the board besides Kyle Pitts. But we haven't got an answer at tight end, but I don't think we really need. You can find them through free agency, undrafted guys in practice squads. I don't think it's that how the NFL is forming at the moment. What are your thoughts around that position being a high commodity in the draft?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that when I've been doing some research for the Steelers War Room, it's interesting when you read these profiles about the tight end position, because I think Bad and I talked about a little bit about it, last week, is that you've got, it might have been when we were off air, but at the times you've got the guys that catch the football, and then you've got the guys that block really well. And there's very rarely the guys that do both, because if you look at the way they're used, right? Like even if you think about the curtain call this week with Jeffrey Bennington and Michael Beck, where they spoke to the Ohio State guys and they looked at a guy like Luke Farrell, who was a tight end there who can catch, but predominantly blocked. And when you look at how, the sort of spread offenses that occur through college, the tight ends are not really asked to do, they're more asked to block than they are to catch. If they're asked to catch, they're not really asked to block. So that's the disparity when you go through these draft profiles. And there's the guy out of Penn State, Fryermuth, who's probably the best hybrid of both. There's a guy I like really late, John Bates out of Boise State there. I think he can do both as well. But it's like you say, and you could probably get him in round, anything from round 5 onwards. You could even be sitting there in round 7, believe it or not, depending on the way things go and are projected to go. But I think you're right there, Mark. You can go get that in the undrafted sense. Like there's a guy, I think he's BYU, Matt Bushman, great blocking tight end, but you can probably get him undrafted, really. Like, so why are you going to spend draft capital on it? And I think that's the interesting thing that you say there. And, where's that position going in the NFL? And it depends on your offense. And I think for Steelers fans, we can see these names like a Freiermuth or Brevin Jordan, who I also like out of Miami. He was in my first War Room show. And, part of me still wants to pick him in the 3rd round, or that's where I would trade some picks next year to get more additional capital, because he, can do, I think, more than what Ebron does, and we can have them both for a while and open up the weapon for Ben. But the thing is that without seeing a Matt Canada offense, I think Steelers fans would be a bit upset, even if anyone else apart from Kyle Pitts, you'd be a bit upset to see the Steelers use capital in days 1 or 2 on a tight end position. And I think at a wider NFL level, it's hard to draft a tight end out of college, because you just don't have – it'll be hard to have that confidence that they can do the full gamut of what you need a tight end to be able to do.
Well, you got the blokes like, George Kittle and guys like that, and Ebron and really specialized tight ends. But that's why I asked the question. I was like, do these tight ends really come out of the draft ready to be number one or to be a game changer? And I feel like if you have an Ebron or a George Kittle, then you have a guy like on our roster, Kevin Rader. He can be that second guy. Like they almost like back in the day with Matt Spaeth, it was always Heath Miller was the guy who caught all the balls, and Matt Spaeth was the blocking guy. No, you never really saw him catch many receptions and move the ball forward, but he did the dirty work. But I find you can probably find a lot of tight ends who can do that dirty work and then have that key number one piece, while you have on the outside, you still have 4 or 5 receivers who can do different things with Deontay Washington and Juju. So that's why I thought the NFL, a lot of teams do like to use 2 tight ends, and tight ends are becoming part of the game. But then how does the draft come into that? And you've answered my question, so that's awesome.
Cheers, buddy. Okay, so we talked a little bit about day 2. We've talked a little bit more around with the 55th pick. Okay, so you've got Najee Harris in there. You've got offensive line. Did you pick a tackle, or let's just don't have to give me a name, but did you pick tackle or center?
We'll go left tackle. If Al's going to go, you've got to replace him somehow.
All right, so you're replacing him with like a Jalen Mayfield or a Liam Eichenberg or someone like that.
He's my new best mate. He's the better Mayfield.
Okay, righto. So you pick Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan there. Okay, so what are you doing with the 3rd round pick? Pick number 87. Well, what position?
This you have to go defense, right?
Wow. Cool. Okay. So you're going running back, tackle, and then you're flicking over to the defense.
Would you go offense for all 3?
Well, this is the point I think it's interesting you bring up, and that's why I'm like, to Steelers fans, do we really think the Steelers are going to go first 3 picks of the draft without picking defense? I mean, and this is what we said before about round 1. That's interesting. I've seen a lot of different mocks of people that supposedly have inside knowledge where Azeez Ojulari is sitting there when the Steelers pick, or Kwity Paye. Do you really think the Steelers are going to be able to skip on a guy like Kwity Paye out of Michigan, or Azeez Ojulari?
I talked about him in the with the Raiders pick on the mock draft. Like he's a brute. Him off the edge is just a wrecking machine. So if a guy like that comes on the edge and he can rush the passer, you got to bring him into the defense for a bit of depth. And the 17 game schedule, you know what's going to happen. There's more guys going to get injured. What I kind of steer clear of now, I'm not too sure if they will bring a guy in for linebacker, because Vince Williams is back. You've almost got 4 there at depth, I'm pretty sure. With other guys, with Spillane, Bush, and you might bring in another guy. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I don't know if you bring a guy behind Alex Highsmith now. Is he you're going to be your starter on the right? So he's in his 2nd year as well, and the Steelers don't normally do that. They tend to, get their linebackers in a motion for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and so I think that's an interesting one with 87, because if I'm looking at your picks right now, right? So you got your Najee Harris there and you got your tackle, right? And then you look at center, and there's a guy like Trey Hill out of Georgia sitting there in round 4. There's a few other guys at that center position. Does Quinn Miners fall back a bit and what have you? Is Landon Dickerson still sitting there because, injury clouds? I've said it on War Room. I've said it a couple of times in different podcasts, and I've said it at nth degree on the Slack channel. I really like Cameron McGrone out of Michigan there at the linebacking position to pair with Bush. He's young and what have you. So, and if I look at the picks you've made, I sort of think perhaps Cameron McGrone can sit there as being that pick. Is there a cornerback there? There could be safeties will fall in this draft, and there's a lot of day 2 talent there. There's some day 1 talent that will fall into day 2. So yeah, we could go defense, but with defense, who are you going to pick, Mark? What position?
Well, that's what I mean. That's the tough one. I would like to see a guy off the edge, but I'm not a draft expert, so I don't know who it's going to be. But
yeah, you could get a.
But I just look back then at the 2020 draft, and we went receiver, outside linebacker, and running back. So I'm just so confused at all. I want it to really happen. But I think if you go a guy on the defense, it's not going to be a starter for the 3rd pick, but it's someone we need to rally behind. And will they sit behind TJ Watt? Will we get maybe someone behind Alu. What's going to happen with his contract? And he's getting long on the tooth as well. So do they? And same with Cam Hayward, and even to the point, Stephon Tuitt. These big fellas up front have been there a long time. Maybe we might need to get someone in there for a bit of depth, for a bit of rotation. We have 7 blokes there. Do you go cornerback, but we don't really draft cornerback that well? And are the top guys already off the list and we can't grab them? Safety, do we get safety with Terrell? Is Minka our guy, and maybe some of our special teams? Who fills in that role for Mike Hilton, my mate who went to the Bungles? This we could almost go back a few shows. I remember there's a lot of questions and little answers. This is a very point leading into the draft now. So many questions, and we haven't got that answer until it happens. But like, who do you go on day 3? You've had O-line, correct? And who did you go for your second?
Yeah, so day 2. So I've gone O-line, and then I technically haven't picked yet.
Oh.
I haven't picked yet on day 2. I think with that position, I'm going to assume that Asante Samuel's is off the board there. So at 55, I'm probably picking Creed in the first. I'm going to go someone like a Liam Eichenberg or if Cosme's there, because we all know I said I would rather get him in round 1. I'd go with Jalen Mayfield as well. Swiss cheese roasted HH. So let's just say I go tackle 2. Right? So then I'm sitting there at 87. And then it's like, is Trey Sermon coming off the board now? Do I go get a Cameron McGrone? Will he fall? There could be a Chaz Surratt there. I agree with you, Mark, though. Is at what point are we going to start drafting a defensive player? Because it just would be very interesting for the Pittsburgh Steelers to draft 3 offensive players. But I like the opportunity in the 4th. So, yeah, I think with the second I'm picking that tackle position, that pick number 87 becomes really interesting. And I'm glad you brought up safety as well, because there are some good safeties in this draft. And no matter what people think, if that's not a position of need, it is in my mind. We have 2 guys that we're going to have to decide on picking up their 5th-year options of. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be relying on next year's draft for safeties. Guys like James Wiggins will be there in the 3rd or the 4th. There's a guy, Jamar Jefferson as well. I talked about him on War Room this week. I really like him. Israel Mukaumu. I know I just butchered his name up, but he's day 2 talent that if you can pick him up early on day 3, and I know we're talking about more around the 3rd round pick right now, but if you can do that, pick him. There's some options there, for the Steelers. So I like the idea of that safety position. I just probably not day 2. I think you can get one in day 3.
That's a great point, but it might be safety because we don't, we've had Edmonds for a while now. He's coming into, is it next year with Edmonds that his contract
needs to
be fixed, right? So maybe, 5 years into it, we get a safety this year, and then you start to play him in the second year.
But what about the shock of, right? And then it's been sitting here for a couple of days. The stirrer in me has been thinking about this. If Trevor, I think his first name is Trevor, if Morrig is sitting there just moving back to round 1, if Morrig is sitting there when the Steelers pick, because there's thoughts that he'll go to Jacksonville, or if he falls, the Ravens will definitely pick him up. Like, he's one of the players that 100% has a round 1 draft grade on him. Do you sit there and you go, what do we do with him? We've lost some guys at the cornerback position. Do we flex Terrell Edmonds around? Like, that's a question the Steelers will have to sit there. If you're talking best player available, and sit there and go, can we leave him off the board? Because he's a guy that I think could be as low as like being drafted, projected at the moment into something like 15, and then, falls, where the Ravens are there at 28. So I think it's interesting when we talk about that from the safety position. And that's why I do really think they're going to have to address this, in day 3 there, or, potentially if there's someone that's top value, do it at the end of day 2, move back into day 2, if you need to.
Yeah, I agree. I just can't wait till it's on, so we can have 24/7 coverage of the AFL draft, the NFL draft. It's just one more step to the process of the football getting back together. And throughout all our shows, don't listen to me, guys. I'm probably the least person to listen about the draft, but everyone else on Behind the Steel Curtain knows what they're talking about. But we have varied opinions everywhere. I want to go running back. Matty wants to go O-line center. We have these discussions all the time, and they're great. But it will be fun and final when we get the last say and we go, oh, here we are, number 24. We have Najee. Let's roll with him. Or we get this a center, or we get these guys start to form. Then we can really start to see what this team's going to be. Because I think, there's been speculations about this team that they're going to be an 8-win team, 7-win team. I don't see it. I really don't see it. I see them competing for the North. And this is where, we got let down last year. We put a team together, grab some, maybe we've got 8 draft picks.
Yep.
Maybe not all those 8 are key players, but we get 3 or 4 out of there that can contribute to the team next year. And obviously it has to be in the first few rounds. We'll get a guy like Dotson in the 4th and those kind of guys. Then, look, we've got a good chance, hopefully, to win a Super Bowl. That's the end goal. And this is where it all starts.
That's it. So before we ask Just Me's question, my final question, and now we're open. So audience, as always, throw in your questions. Let's do it thick and fast to close out the show. We know Snowman will jump in there right at the end as well. But Mark, do the Steelers draft a punter in the 7th round? We've got pick number 254. The 254, would you be open to the Steelers drafting a punter?
The biggest reason I would say no, because if you can find them, you can find guys like that and those special team guys through competition when they're leading into the undrafted guys and through training camps. You're not going to waste a pick on punter. You're going to have a guy you think you can develop into creating into a good defensive guy or special hybrid guy linebacker. You're not going to waste a pick and give a guy, oh hey mate, here's a job, and you just kick the ball. No. These guys who want to make the team have to go through the avenues of being undrafted and have competition and then trying to beat out Berry.
Yep. Well, I mean, this is it, though. Like you're the Berry fan, so you want I'm just
an Australian fan. Look, if I had the chance to kick a ball and make millions of dollars and watch my team play from the sidelines, he's got the best view for free. Let's think about that, guys. The punter Berry has the best view on the sidelines. We're all fans. But he's got the number 1 ticket, and he punts 4 times a game, and he's watching the game. He doesn't do anything else. But imagine that it cost me $300 for a ticket, up in the sidelines there. But Barry's got a free ride. I would love that as a Pittsburgh fan. I would love to live in that city for a year or 4 or 5 years. He's watching every game. He's seeing Tom Brady. He's seeing like Patrick Mahomes. Seeing all these stars, and he's kicking a ball. What a job.
Classic.
Matty, you know it's true.
I do. Because most Aussies can kick a ball. Like we just can. We can kick a ball.
You and I can. It's in our blood. It's just.
I can kick a rugby ball. Like even I haven't kicked one in a couple of years. I can still kick one 35 meters torpedo, and that's like how many yards is that? Right? Like
no, 400. It just goes straight up, mate. That's what we do.
The NFL balls go way longer. I remember when we were in grade 8. So what is that? Is that middle school over there? Junior high? I always get that mixed up. Whatever it is. Anyway, someone had an NFL ball they were throwing around, and threw around, and we were kicking it like AFL style. And we were kicking it like way down the field. It was ridiculous. No wonder there's all these Aussie punters. But anyway, we've had Just Me's question up there for a while. What is the strangest animal that you've seen in the streets or wild in Australia, Mark?
Can you go first? Because I'm still thinking about mine. Do you have one in your mind?
I once, when I lived and I lived much closer to the city, inner city, like 10-minute drive max into the heart, which is actually really close when you're in Australia, but like really close to the capital city. 5-minute drive, depending on traffic. And I looked out my window one day, and there was a guy, and it's not a crazy animal, but there was a guy walking his goat like a dog. I don't know about you. I just seen that. You've got this like capital city, like Sydney, and someone's walking around their goat, like just down the road. It's just one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's really random. It's just
that's normal, Matty. The strangest thing I can say for an animal, I'm going to bring it back to down under in Australia we have spiders, and we have like massive ones. They're pretty much everywhere. Wherever you look, they're hiding somewhere. They're in your clothes, but I've got 2 stories with a spider because I guess I've got a fear of spiders, or a lot of people in Australia do. I've had a spider story where I have been driving my car and I've seen the spider crawl up my windscreen on the inside. and I was driving 70 kilometers, which is about I was driving 70 kilometers. I don't know how much of these are miles. Might be 100 miles. I'm not sure. 50. No. It would be less. Sorry. But I was driving 70 kilometers in the spider of the corner wrong, and I had to grab a McDonald's bag, and squish it against the window while I was driving because I didn't want that thing falling on me while I was driving, and it was pretty big, right? So I've had that happen to me. I've had one where I put my shirt on, and on the inside of my shirt.
Oh, no, stop, please stop.
I've got one more then. I put it on, and I went, holy, there's a spider in there, and I threw it straight off. And I was like, the guys, they're everywhere. My last one, when I was at the gym recently, about 2 months ago, I was riding on the bike, and then this huntsman, if you guys look up huntsman, they're the size of your hand. They're that big. I had my feet strapped into the bike, and I'm riding along. I always try and do 10Ks, 15K, try and go as hard as I can. And then I see this huntsman crawl up the bike, and I fell off because it freaked me out. It was huge. It was so big. It was a massive spider. So I haven't got any strange animals. I just got a lot of spider stories that I've seen.
I had one crawl. I hate spiders, right? I had one crawl up my leg. A huntsman. It was like a growing hunt. When I wasn't full, but he crawled on my leg at school. And I flicked him off, and then he jumped back on my leg, and then I flicked him off again, and I jumped on him like about 25 times. I was like 6 years old or something, and ever since then I hate him. Absolutely hate him. It's just no.
But they're everywhere in Australia. Like I've had another, like Mike says here, what's a pretty big spider for y'all? Well, basically, pretty big is for me is when it's the size of my hand. Now I've seen it a few times where I've seen it in my house or other people's houses, and the hunts are like that. But I've had one when I've jumped into the pool and I put my hand over the lip of the pool, and there's a spider under there. They're just everywhere. Like, and they do say that apparently you eat them when you sleep or something. Someone said they're alive.
Yeah, awful.
I guess we're not really spider fans here down under. We're not really the old. We're not from the bush. If we were from the bush, we wouldn't even get reception. We haven't got Wi-Fi yet out there. They're still on black and white TV.
I want to bring up Thaddeus's question. Is there a player you would trade on draft day like a Martavius Bryant draft day trade? Mark, first, would you do it? Is there someone?
I'm not really sure. It's always if you trade one of your best players and you're not too sure who you're going to get out of that, are you?
That's a great point.
I'm happy with the team we have so far. Now, I'm not even sure if any of the players, receivers, defensive guys even have trade value. People are saying trade Mason, but does he have value? You know what I'm saying? Do some like the Steelers, I think, are in a good spot just to draft players and see where they go from that. Not overly be too fancy and trade their guys away.
Jeff would like to see us trade Jordan Berry, so I'm just giving public favor there for Jeff.
Look, he's okay. He's okay. He's doing his job. Like I said, I would be happy to watch games. He gets 8 free games a year, and he sees all gets to go around America and gets paid like $1 million. What a job!
But honest answer for you there, Thaddeus, I would trade Benny Snell. Trade. Who else have you got sitting there? I would have said you could do something with the cornerback position, but we've lost a few of those guys. I've said this, in I think one of the Slack channels. If you can get a second pick out of this, or you can get a third and then a fifth, because remember we don't have a fifth, trade James Washington. Now people are going to go, oh wow, we don't need to do that. But like, I'm open to seeing what they can do with some of their guys there. Like if someone came in and did a blockbuster trade for Ebron, do it. Like I just think that there's some opportunities here. Trade BJ Finney for a fifth. Particularly if you draft your center there. Like, and this is the thing. I think you're not going to see a player. The Steelers are not going to be drafting someone up the board. In that round one. But if they start drafting guys into key positions, it opens up the possibility at least. And if Matt Canada hadn't come in, I would have said you could have traded a guy like Jalen Samuels. But again, is he really going to be worth much draft capital? Probably not. So this is the thing. And Mark, you bring up Mason Rudolph. I don't think the Steelers are in a position where they can trade Mason Rudolph. Haskins is not there ready to go. Josh Dobbs is holding the clipboard and is a camp body, if anything else. Even if he sits there through the season and he's like having an extra scout on your roster kind of thing, that might open up to a couple of trick plays every now and again throughout the season. So I don't think we're in a position because we don't have a backup QB and we're in so many other needs in this draft. And unless, although I am really open, we didn't get to go too deep into day 3. I'm open. If Jamie Newman's sitting there at the start of day 3, do something to get him. Then yeah, you could see some of the trades for those different guys. Port Naquemba, blockbuster.
Sorry.
Bring that back up.
Yeah.
Blockbuster and Ebron are 2 words that should never be used in the same sentence.
He just got to stay. He got to stay on his feet. Whenever he caught the ball, he just falls over. He's a good catcher. He's a good runner.
It's kind of like that. He's kind of like that video chain that went bust.
Oh, Blockbuster. Yeah, they're long gone.
They fell down.
Same with Video Easy. They're all gone. Sorry, guys, if you own that. If you're a businessman, they were gone. We had a super chat, Matty, then.
Bring it up. Sean brings us $2 in the tip jar. If we don't go RB and we can't find one, do we get one in free agency? It's an interesting question. There's not many guys left sitting there in free agency that are really worth bringing in. And also, there's guys late. Like, there's a guy I really like. I previewed him in the war room about 3 or 4 weeks ago. There's a guy, Jamar Jefferson out of Oregon State. Really tough, gritty little running back there that can, paired with a McFarland or, if you're doing Jalen Samuels with some H-back stuff, if you pair him with another, like I did a mock draft yesterday, actually, where I picked 2 guys really late. I picked a fast, explosive guy out of Virginia Tech, I think it was, or you can pick one of the guys out of like Louisville. And then I paired him with Jamar Jefferson. So I get someone that's more speedy and I get someone that's more gritty. I'd be more open to see the Steelers do something like that than bring in someone in free agency because all the good guys are pretty much gone now.
I'll tell you who you bring in. You bring in the leading number 3 rusher, Frank Gore. That's who you bring in. You bring him in to get that man a championship. I don't care if he runs 3 times. I don't care if he's holding the pad. That guy needs a championship. Imagine working 17 years and then you don't even get a pen.
Put your money where your mouth is. Would you buy a Frank Gore jersey if the Steelers?
Oh yeah, bloody oath I would. He's a legend. Like, he just keeps going. I'm not even sure if he's signed yet, but if he signs with the Steelers and he let him play 50 downs, 75 downs, get that man a championship.
Thaddeus says, Matty, how about we trade Alawalu to Jacksonville? He doesn't want to go there, Thaddeus. We need him back. And also, then we've got to draft one. Like, I really like some of the prospects that are late and taking a punt on some of the late prospects. Like, there's a guy like Lorenzo Neal who's done nothing for 2 years in college, but was like going to be a top 30 pick before that. So do you use a 7th on him and try and get him back to his best? Because I think if he comes off, he'll be a lot better than a Carlos Davis Jr. Sorry, bad. Your son might not last in the Steelers. But, that's the question there. So, but I like Thaddeus' point, though. Are there other players that you can look around that fringe to sort of trade? Does Chris Wormley go up? For some teams, do they want someone like a Chris Wormley? No one went really for him in free agency. So, this is what's going to be interesting. What if someone says to you, we'll give you a late day 3 pick or a 4th rounder for Robert Spillane? You have to sit there at that point and go, well, hang on a second. Like, this is pretty good value as someone on a minimum. All right, Snowman with the usual, but we always are appreciative. $5 super chat to close out the show, and this show has gone incredibly quickly today. Mark, I'm going to ask this of you. What do you think of Justin Lane getting arrested? Do you think his Steelers career is over?
3 words, I think. Pull your head in. 4 words. That's all I'm saying on the idea. Pull your head in, right or wrong or right, left or right, whatever. I don't know enough. I'm too far away. I don't really want to make any comments because he could come back. He might not come back. I don't know the full story. I heard it yesterday. It's a big thing now, a lot of drama in the Steelers. Just get your mind together. I hope everything
Would you
goes
cut him?
right.
Would you cut him after some of the stuff that was released? Did you see some of the sound bites? Dave Schofield shared it in the in the BTSC Slack channel, the
This is
stuff
what I'm saying.
Lane was saying in the car, the cops, and I was just like,
Look, I'm not paid enough like Barry to sit on the sidelines and enjoy the game. So I can't make that decision. I would just say if you did it wrong or right, just pull your head in and yeah, everyone makes mistakes, whatever he did, right? But I don't know. I can't give an answer. I'm sorry, guys.
I reckon he's gone. I agree with what Gary Chandler there on the Facebook side says. The Roonies won't keep troublemakers. I completely agree. Also, he wasn't doing anything anyway. The only thing going for him is that he's on his rookie contract. That's from my perspective. Shield 91 throws $2 in the tip jar. Thank you very much, Shield. Shield's a great fan of mine on Twitter too, or great mate of ours, and a great mate of the show. And loves to throw in his thoughts, and we really appreciate them. He's just saying, hey, and hope you have a good week. We think that's everyone else, across that's listening right now, whether you're listening live or listening back to us on the podcast side. Have a good week. Enjoy this week as well. This week it's going to be really exciting. You're going to see people move up and down draft boards. You're going to see speculation galore. Everyone will have some sort of hot take. If you're watching anything with Mel Kiper, he's not going to get most of his picks right. So maybe listen to someone else. But you know what? Mark and I will be coming to you at different points throughout the draft process. We're going to be, we won't have a show next week because it'll be day 3 by that stage. And it'll be pretty exciting there. But we'll join you the week after, and that will be awesome in itself. And we'll have all these picks to talk about. But Mark, can you believe it? We're almost there. We're almost at that finish line.
Yeah, we need to get there fast because, what you said, Mel Kiper's got about his mock draft is about 33 at the moment. Mock draft where he's got trades going galore. And, once these guys have their draft day, you never hear from them again. So Kiper's going crazy with his mock drafts, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see who we pick. And we've got a lot of shows on Behind the Steel Curtain. Keep up to date with us. We have a lot of shows.
And just to close it out, George Teston throws in another $5 into the tip jar. So thank you very much, George. He said, "This is for my brother Tony. He passed away Wednesday." From all of us from Behind the Steel Curtain, we can just say sorry to hear that, mate. Really sorry to hear that. Very tough time as well for you going through that. And we can dedicate this one to a brother of one of our BTSC family. We all need to pull together around our BTSC family at times and when it's needed. So yeah, our thoughts and prayers are with you there, mate. But with that closes out this week's Steelers Touchdown Under. Mark.
Go Steelers.